Two.
And one. Okay, Mark, I'm going to turn it to you as the chair to start the meeting.
Okay. All righty. I'm trying to fill out this checklist for public meetings with regard to who's here. So is Ken Fleck here?
Yes.
And is Sam here? Sam Quigley?
He was.
Yeah. And Sam Quigley's here, and is Tom Pattis here?
I don't see Tom.
I don't see his name on the list, and so okay. So I'm Mark Eccles, chairperson of the Utah Geological Survey Board. I'd like to call this meeting of the Utah Geological Survey Board to order. I'd like to make a note that it's a virtual meeting. The time is now 8:42 a.m. on April 15th, 2020. This meeting is being held virtually with Google Meet due to the COVID-19 stay home, stay safe order. In compliance with Utah's open meetings law, this meeting is being recorded in its entirety. This recording is classified as a public document. The following board members are in attendance: Mark Eccles, Dave Garbarek, Rick Chestnut, Ken Fleck, Sam Quigley, Alyssa Richards, Pete Kilborn. Tom Fatties is not present. The following individuals representing the Utah Geological Survey and the Department of Natural Resources are in attendance: Bill Keach, Mike Hillen, Jodi Patterson, Cheryl Guston. Now, there are some other people there. I think Emily's here. Is that right?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Any others?
Jay Hill is our technical guy.
Jay Hill, okay. All right. I guess there are no visitors today, unless they're online. If there's an online visitor, please identify yourself at this point. As a courtesy to everyone participating in this meeting at this time, we ask for all cell phones, pagers, and other electronic devices to be turned off or changed to silent mode. Board motions and votes must be reflected in the minutes and recorded by individual board member. Let us now proceed with the agenda.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen, Mike or Mark.
Okay.
Wrong one. Just give me a moment here.
Has it snowed 3 inches this morning at anybody else's house?
No.
Beautiful
day here in Price.
Yeah.
A little cold though from looking.
Yeah, it has been.
Okay. Taking a moment here. There we go. Anybody not see that? Okay, good. So do you want to go here, Mark?
Yes. So the first item on the agenda is for you to introduce new staff.
Which we don't really, we have one intern at this point, so they're not invited. We've only met her once. She started, her name was Rebecca Lee. She's working for the Groundwater group. She joined the UGS the same day we sent everybody home, March 16th. That was an interesting day to bring somebody in and run them through all the HR stuff.
Yeah, welcome. Now get out of here.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments later that will have her name, and we lost one person, so I'll go through that. But I don't have anyone to introduce, so I'll go over it a little more later.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from January 8th, 2020 meeting. Does anybody have any comments on that? I went through the minutes pretty carefully and didn't have any issues. If there are no comments, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes for the last meeting,
Is there a
January
second?
8th.
I'll
And
second.
who made the motion?
Dave,
Dave Garbrecht, okay. And is there a second? And please identify yourself.
Elisa will second.
Okay, Elisa seconded. So the minutes have been approved and seconded, or a motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those
aye.
opposed, say nay. The minutes have been approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the director's report, so turn the time over to Bill.
I thought we had the approval.
Oh, I'm sorry. Also, we need to formally approve the project proposals that we've approved by email since the last meeting. And there's a list of those in your board packet. Does anybody have comments on any of those?
And I'm just going to scroll through them here.
Okay,
We did add the 3 that showed up in the last couple of days.
okay, that are not on the printed list.
Yeah,
Okay,
I believe, yeah, these are the last 3 that weren't on the list that you have in your packet. Okay,
all right. Any comments? I would entertain a motion to approve the to formally approve the project proposals entered since the January meeting.
This is Elisa, and I move to approve the proposal since the January meeting, and good job.
Yeah. Thank you, Elisa. And is there a second for that
This is
motion?
Pete, I second.
Thank you. So the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? So that motion has also been unanimously approved. Now we move to the director's report.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Boy, when I wrote my article for survey notes, which doesn't come out until May, but I wrote it in March, I said March came in like a lion. And ain't that is, I can't imagine more of a line that has come in.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start up here with just the COVID-19 and an earthquake. A week before March 16th, at the survey, at the Utah Geological Survey, we began to recognize that this was probably going to happen, to stay at home. So we created a Google Sheets doc. We sent out a survey. We said, who could work from home? What equipment do you need? Do you have internet? You know, does this happen? Can we make it work? And then we directed everyone to request what they call VPN, virtual private network, about a week before the 13th. And we flooded IT with a bunch of requests from 60 about employees. And by the weekend, the order was coming out. We need to send everybody home. So the good thing was that we were a little ahead of the curve. And on Monday morning, I think there were maybe 10 people at the office out of 65 employees that work in that building. And then by Tuesday afternoon, we were down to just 5 or 6 people. And as I'm walking out the door, I'm talking with Steve Bowman, our housing director. And I looked at Steve and I says, what if we have an earthquake while we're all out? And he says, the odds of that are so minuscule, let's not even worry about it. And then I jumped in my car and I drove to Hurricane, which is where I'm hunkered down. And 7:11 in the morning, my phone started going ding, 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 with text messages. And at about 7:15, I had a call from the director, Steed, about what was going on. And we had all the information that he needed. And I got to tell you that the hazards teams and GIO responded just so fast and professionally that there wasn't even a beat skipped. I mean, it was just amazing at how quickly Steve Bowman and I were talking on the phone already. So anyway, I'll talk more about that a little bit later, but that's how fast the middle of March jumped up on us. And so I thought I'd share that. So my 9 o'clock in the morning, you know, we were having all the program manager meeting. And we were having a virtual meeting. Like I said, the folks that we work with, the leaders are just really good folks, and they have adapted. And we have just about everybody home. We have a couple of people in the office. We're gonna be down to one this week. It's been 4 weeks now that we've been home. It doesn't seem like it, but it's been full 4 weeks. And by the number of proposals that you've been approving, you can see they've been busy. They've been very busy. And the number of reports that we've read and approved and ran through editorial is amazing. We think this is going to keep going till at least the end of May. You know, somebody may, you know, I don't know if Trump, I don't know if Herbert, I don't know what, they may change that. But at this point, we're assuming this is going to go probably for another 6 weeks. So anyway, just that's our plans. That's what we're planning for. Here's what it looked like in our building a little bit. I just grabbed a few pictures. You know, the UGS office is not very far from the epicenter. The biggest damage is probably those filing cabinets that fell over. I showed the picture on the upper right. All the drawers opened on the left side. Not an item moved on the shelf on the right.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I just was like, really? Picture lower right, I thought there was a table setting, it looks like. I see a fork and a plate, and the plate's broken half. I don't know. So we had a lot of, you know, we probably had one cabinet destroyed. Other than that, we came through it pretty well. Some broken glass in my office from picture frames. And that was about it. The core lab wrote it out really well. Had a number of boxes that had slid around, kind of like those drawers. I think we had one box, but not a core, that came off of a shelf. And that was about it. So anyway, personnel changes. I mentioned Rebecca Lee, now working with Groundwater. And from the Groundwater folks, they say she's doing a great job on the things they're asking her to do. Matt Morris was an intern who had a grant from the National Science Foundation, was with us for 6 months. He had gotten it renewed and planned to stay longer when the USGS offered him a job, so he's gone. We have an opening out right now for a senior GIS analyst. That position is to replace Doug Sprinkle, who retired in December, who was a field mapper. Zach Anderson was previously the senior GIS analyst when he got promoted to a field mapper. And Grant's had a very firm commitment to replace Zach, who basically is in training. We would be the person we would anticipate will ultimately replace Kent Brown, who anticipates retirement in the next 2 years. No one has said to me as the director that I am retiring. That doesn't mean that I'm not hearing a number of reports. We have several that may be retired before the end of the year. But officially, I don't have any notifications. If you got questions, please jump in. I'm happy to take any.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to replace Doug.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. I mean, we're not even trying to at this point. You know, and this probably is worth a comment here. We'll talk about budget a little later, but we're concerned about how many people will actually be able to replace, even if they do go. But look, we'll shelve that conversation for a little bit, in a couple of minutes. Tom Chizik continues to get some recognitions. Geological is a I wouldn't call it it's not a peer-reviewed journal, but it is a magazine that caters to the oil and gas industry. They're based out of the UK. I've written articles for them in the past. A number of our staff have. So in their May issue, they decided to profile Tom as a geologist, and so I just put it up in here. It talks about all the extra things he does, and Tom does do a lot of extra stuff. In addition to his role here, one thing that Tom and I share is that we've been co-chairs of the alumni committee for the geology department at Brigham Young for golf. In the last I don't even remember, 8 years, something like that. But we've been the chairs for a long time. I put in here the field trip. Just, I wanted to get your feedback and thoughts on this. We had decided that we would go in September. I'm hoping we still can, but if you guys have got comments, we have not done anything yet to, identify someone to lead the trip. But I just thought I'd share a cool picture I took a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, out at Snow Canyon. Any comments? Should we still do it? Should we wait and see?
I think we should keep it scheduled and keep an eye on things.
Okay. I mean,
This is Pete. I agree. I think actually it's probably the best time because the virus may return when we get back to cooler weather.
Okay. So that'd be a good time to go then. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that was on our forefront. We were talking about it. But some really cool geology to go see up there. Okay. Before all this came down, we did move the Megablock. That was quite a Herculean effort. There was a lot of discussions about places that might take it, but nobody stepped up in the end, except for us. I've got another little PowerPoint I'm going to link to here. So we made the decision to move it out to our core center. And on the very back of our core center is a little building that's been known as Tom's Slab Shop, in reference to Tom Dempster, who's our gentleman who cuts most of our cores and does a lot of the prep work. But it had two parts, and in this part, when I walked out there, I said, now this building, this room was full of stuff, but we ultimately chose to move it out here. And I walked in, I said, what's with all this damage? I couldn't believe it. I thought we got to be violating some OSHA or some EPA or some workplace rules with exposure to fiberglass. So we made a decision to invest the funds to refurb this building. And so we covered up in sheetrock, we had it taped, we had it painted. One side of the bay is now known as the Raptor Bay. We have the Rock Bay and the Raptor Bay. And so here we are on a Saturday, getting out here ready to get this room ready to go. And we painted the floors. And so now had to move it from Thanksgiving Point to our place. And moving 18,000 pounds requires a unique set of skills and tools. And so they had to replaster the 18,000 pound block. So the upper half, if I can use my cursor, this was the original, it was exposed from here up. And so they had to replaster it. The University of Utah folks came. This is Don DeBlow. He was our leader in getting this thing moved and ready to move. So Don oversaw all those efforts and did a great job. Interesting thing is, you might notice over here on the right, these little black dashed lines. When Don covered this up, he took some of that gray pipe insulation that you get at Home Depot or Lowe's, and he put it on the edge. And then when he plastered it, he would know where to bring his saw and cut it off. I thought that was a clever idea. And they use this fancy little dolly here. It's motorized. I think I've got a video. Maybe not. And they had to jack it up and put those things underneath it. Here we go. The interesting thing is this thing is 95 inches wide. And all the doors it went through at most were 96 inches. And so they had to get it precise. And when they maneuvered it, they had to come around this corner and get it around the sinks and the walls. And this crew did a really good job. We did have a full audience at the museum looking through the windows. A lot of kids. I thought it was cool. And let's see, I'll keep going through. So that doorway there is 96 inches. And we got it through there. You can barely see how tight it was. And then the same trucking company that moved it from, it's a tow company that tows cars and trucks, used one of their special trucks, and they moved it originally from Salt Lake to here now, and they moved it back for us. We put a GoPro camera up on the top, and we actually filmed the move of this thing coming from Lehigh to Salt Lake. I won't bore you with all of it, but I thought it was pretty cool. And everybody's going faster than we are. They're just trying to get on the freeway there at Thanksgiving Point. But anyway, what was amazing was the GoPro was wired or taped onto a furring strip, which did not break, which is good. Once we got down there, we had a lot of TV crews from all the different TV stations. Even the KSL helicopter was flying above. So a lot of people were there. You can see Mike Hill in there in the background and Jim Kirkland. So quite a few folks. So a couple quick time-lapse videos. They even brought this fancy forklift, which extends in the back for the weight load.
Wow.
And that, again, it's a 96-inch door, and they got it in. Once they got it in, they had to rotate it 90 degrees. That was the bigger challenge. So anyway, they did a great job. They did a really good job. So.
Yeah.
So moved successfully, and now it's been uncapped, and work has started anew on the preparation of the fossils. So good work to everybody there. So I want to come back now and talk about the earthquake a little bit more, and then Emily will talk to us in detail and give us and be able to answer any questions. Right, Emily?
That's right.
That's right. She's here to help us all out. So if I say something wrong, Emily, along the way here, please feel free to correct me.
Sounds good, Bill.
I'm okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings. What was interesting is that, this thing hit, like I said, 7:09 in the morning. By 9 o'clock, all the managers were on a phone call. I think by that time, Steve had come down from, he lives outside of Park City. Where is it?
Camas.
In Camas. He drove all the way down, and we were manning the emergency operations center. And we have a little branch of it in our offices, and then the main one's up at the Capitol. So we were shuttling folks. He and Gordon Douglas were going back and forth between the two. In the middle of our 9 o'clock meeting, Brian Steed walks into our virtual meeting, literally, and says, "You guys got to get something out. Social media is circulating a message that says that there's going to be, the USGS and the University of Utah are predicting a 9.0 earthquake in the next 30 minutes. And so right in the middle of our meeting, Mark Milligan, our GIO folks, really stepped up and got new releases out to the press that this wasn't true. I had friends in Linden told me they got media posts that the refineries were shutting down and there would be a gas shortage, so gas lines started forming in a few spots in the state. Amazing what can happen. And social media, why people think they want to promote bad information, I have no idea. If somebody would put that out there. Steve Bowman went and joined Brian Steed and the governor at his press conference. I watched it. Steve did a good job in representing us and what's going on. But like I said, the information came fast and furious. Little sideline about the UGS during this pandemic. It's been fun for me to watch how the different programs are working to communicate with each other. With Emily and the hazards groups we've been using in Google, what they call Google Chat. So anybody that's online in their meetings, you might see a chat message pop up and there'll be a whole stream of messages. Most of them are work related, but I'm going to tell you once in a while, there'll be a comment about just to ease the tension, and they're great. They're really good. I am Mike Vandenberg's Energy and Minerals group. It seems like about 1:30, 2 o'clock, after they've been working for most of the day, you start to see little pop-up messages and they'll circulate amongst the whole group. Their text message group is the one that actually alerted me to the earthquake. And this is why I'm circling back to this, is that earthquake went off at 7:09 and at 7:11, I started getting texts from Mike's group that had the depth, that had the location, had the magnitude. So then when I took Brian Steed's call at 7:15, I had all the details already. And it was because these different groups are finding ways to maintain their sense of community as they work on the science, which I just think is great. I'm just impressed. So that's how I learned about it. And we spent the whole next day, the teams mobilized. Do I have that in the next one? The teams mobilized and went out. I know Emily will talk more about that, so I'll leave that to her. But they went out. We've put out quite a bit of information. There's another conference call tomorrow, the University of Utah folks, to discuss some ideas that UGS folks have about cause. Figure in the upper right shows all the aftershocks. I think as of this morning, I saw 1,180, something like that. And what we think is going on. But I don't think it would necessarily agree yet. They'll talk more about that. And 3D diagrams that Gordon has built. Probably enough on the earthquake. I don't want to take any more from Emily. Any questions? Okay. Anyway, good job by GIO and Hazards to deal with the situation literally 2 days after being uprooted from their comfort zones, and did a great job. About a week later, the DEM, the Division of Emergency Management, through their public information officers, Mark Milligan is our public information officer, Nathan Schwabach is the one for the DNR, and Joe Doherty is one for DM. They got together and decided that there was a lot of different web pages out there that talked about earthquakes, but not really one clearing site or clearinghouse type site. And so they asked if the UGS folks could help them build a site. And Marshall Robinson and his group, Mackenzie Cope, Jackie in the GIO, Mark, they built a site in 8 days, had it up and running. I think on the first day they had 15,000 visits, if I remember the stat right from Nathan. Is that right, Mark? You know, Mark Milligan? Maybe Mark can't hear me. Okay, anyway, you'll have to go on my word then. So anyway, if you want about earthquakes now, a new website called earthquakes.gov.
Earthquakes.utah.gov.
Utah.gov, thank you. And it's pretty good. We've got a section at the end of this meeting to talk about how do we better educate the public And I think Mark Eccles is going to lead that discussion. Mark Milligan is prepared to help on that as well. But just wanted you to know that, again, within days of being uprooted from their comfortable surroundings, they really stepped up and delivered. Energy minerals, lots going on. You've seen a lot of grants floating through that we're working on. Just had one from the USGS. It was a two-part project, part hazards for data preservation and part critical minerals. One that Stephanie Mills is going to work on, that got fully funded. We have a couple of others that we're still waiting to hear back on out there. Critical minerals of Utah report that the USGS commissioned last year is scheduled for release next month. It's going through our final editorial reviews right now. A lot of people are interested in that. Had a conversation actually yesterday with Stephanie and Andrew Ruppy, who heads up our minerals groups, with some folks out of Southern Utah. I have some ideas of how to better explore. Mike Vandenberg and his teamed up with Rob Simmons over at the Governor's Office of Energy to form a Uinta Basin oil and gas working group. Mark Eccles is part of that. That group met last week for the first time, and they're meeting again today. Their goal, as I understand it, and Mark Eccles, you can help me here, is to find ways to keep these producers, I guess, in survival mode. Is that a good way to paraphrase that, Mark?
I think so. It's still a moving target, actually, as far as whether there's even anything that can be done in these circumstances. Before I signed on here, I checked the price of WTI, and it was $20 today. And Uinta Basin waxy crude sells right now for $12.50 less, so it's at $7.50. The last time I sold oil for $7.50 in Utah was in 1998, and that was only for a few days. This is a huge disaster. It's going to cause more damage to the Utah Geological Survey because of the mineral lease fund component than the 5.7 magnitude earthquake did, I promise you. And so,
and the pandemic, yeah.
Yeah. So, if anybody wants a brief explanation of what's going on, I'd be happy to provide that. But this is going to be really ugly for quite a while.
I agree. I think we all agree.
And it's a good thing you've got so many proposals being approved coming down the pipeline, because we're going to need every dime of that.
Yeah. And the challenge that we're going to have in all these grants that you folks have approved is that not all of them, but most of them require match.
Yep.
Meaning, for every dollar we get from an outside agency, we got to provide $1 of labor to do it. And that, we'll talk about this a moment in the mapping program. That's going to be our stretch. Is how do we provide our dollar to match the federal dollars? Because what happens is if we can't match it, then we lose that money. It becomes a double whammy if we don't have the staff available. So some serious concerns. Paradox Basin DOE Department of Energy project continues to move forward. We're slowly, oil companies have backed away. Part of the DOE project was awarded to the University of Utah with the UGS as a partner. And EGIU, one of the commitments was to drill a well in the first year. And the companies that had several companies said they'd be willing to drill a well, they've all backed away from that. So to get the DOE funding, the project's gonna have to drill its own well. And they had cited a location in a well, not optimal, but one where they could do a strat test, basically. But with this downturn in the economy, they ultimately realized that, if we wait a couple of months, the rig costs will probably go down even more.
Oh, hugely.
Yeah. So we may be able to, so they're going to rebid the wells in more optimal locations.
Wait 6 months and do it.
Yeah.
the rig count in the Uinta Basin last week went from 6 to 4, and nobody's announced this, but I am certain that when those 4 rigs finish the holes that they're on, the rig count's going to go to 0, and it's going to stay there for a long time.
And I think that's Mike Vandenberg's. I think you and he agree on that.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, and the Forge project is continuing to move forward. We're continuing to do work for them. There's a lot more things I could about energy and minerals. I just picked a few of the highlights. Another publication called the Utah Energy Landscape, which comes out of the Governor's Office of Energy Development. They're the ones putting this out. That goal is also for mid-May. Mapping. This is where some really big grants have come in. The USGS has their regular state map program, which we get every year, and it seems to go down a little bit each year. We were awarded that, but about 5 or 6 weeks ago, maybe it was at the end of February. Yeah, at the end of February, we got an email from the U.S. Geological Survey that there would be additional funds available, and you've got like a few weeks to write a whole new project for up to $300,000 in funding. And so we talked about it, debated how could we mobilize staff that are not currently being billed out, just trying to find a way that we can match $1 for every dollar we spend to keep us going. So we proposed another $299,919, and it was awarded. So we got both. Now we've got to figure out how to spend it. Then a few weeks ago, another email came saying there would be $100,000, up to $100,000 available in no match funds, and asking us to apply. So the USGS must have got some funds. They have to spend them before their end of this fiscal year, and they're reaching out to a number of agencies. So we applied for that. We got notified that they're still working on them, but it might be less than the 92, but it would be no match funds. Similar one is going on in minerals as well, on a mapping project for Gold Hill, maybe up to 100,000 of no match, which would be great for us.
Yeah.
Groundwater and wetlands groups, those folks continue to be the most, I think for every dollar we spend on them, they have a match. We've got a couple of intern positions that we need to fill to keep up with the grants. But with the pandemic, it's created a bit of an issue because a lot of the field mapping for wetlands is work that's done in teams of 2. And that is really difficult. You know, how do we pull that off with the current guidelines? Now, we may be able to pull that off, but just to kind of give you some insights in terms of field work, you know, we don't want to put 2 people in the same vehicle. So now rather than, you know, driving out to Snake Valley with 2 people and doing field work, you're going to take 2 cars out. It raises its own set of risks of having 2 cars on the road instead of 1. We have been directed by the state that field work is still considered an essential part of government work. And so across all of DNR, those that do field work are still free to go do it. We are the same way. But it has put a crimp on, and how do we get interns brought on board? How do we train them and then get them out into the field? Because the interns don't necessarily have vehicle access, and they have to go with an employee. So some kinks we're still trying to work through. But Groundwater has plenty of projects, and they're doing a great job. From GIO, the bookstore, we close it. We made a decision initially to try and keep it open. DNR wanted to try and keep some of the services open. We're now just manning it through online activity. Part of the problem is that, you know, out there on North Temple and Redwood Road, you get a lot of people that tend to wander in off of the streets, and they just want to wander around and touch everything. And in an effort to protect our employees, we just didn't feel that was a good idea. So Any comments, Mike, on that? Mike Hillen?
No, not really. I guess, always trying to look for a positive slant on it it is kind of a nice opportunity that we're taking advantage of to transition from our current online store platform, Xcart, to Shopify, which should end up being a greatly improved online experience for customers. So that's our main effort right now. But I talked with Brian Butler, our bookstore manager, a little bit yesterday, and sales for March are not good. And we're anticipating over the next couple months that trend will continue. So it's tough to be a retailer at the moment.
Is there anybody actually physically in the bookstore during the day?
Yeah, Gentry Hammerschmidt has been going in every day. He's filling the online and the phone orders that do come in, and he's also doing some work related to the online store transition that has to be done physically in the store.
So is there any possibility of having notice online that the bookstore would be physically available by appointment so that you could control who and how many people come in at once?
Yeah, we actually we tried that a couple weeks back. It was kind of an intermediate step between keeping the store open and where we're at now. Mm-hmm. And we decided that we don't quite qualify as an essential service in terms of needing to be physically open for in-store customers, and that the risk still associated with like what Bill mentioned, just people coming in that potentially could be carriers of COVID-19. We just thought that our best move was to close it to in-store customers.
Okay.
And so, yeah, on our website and on social media, that's the direction that we're giving people, is that we're open for online and phone orders.
This is Pete. I have down the road when things start opening up a little bit. Is it possible to maybe have a glass or plastic right at the front of and sort of a walk up and not go in kind of thing, where something could be passed through? Like, I'd just like to see this map and not actually have people go in.
Yeah, that would be similar to what we tried for a few days now, a couple of weeks back, where we had a table set up right in the entrance, right in the doorway there, and so it provided a buffer. We could do something like that.
And I'm not suggesting anytime soon, but as things progress.
Yeah, we're basically taking it, not quite week by week, but at least in terms of the durations of the directives that were given by the governor. So it's continually evolving.
Mike, it's Cheryl speaking. We actually did have someone come in yesterday. Gentry had stepped away, so we took the order of what the person needed. Well, Star went down there, and she took the order of what the person needed and said, we can gather it, but you'll need to call in tomorrow, and you can pay by the credit card, and we can set it out for you. So they are still doing that if someone does happen to come in.
Cool.
Okay, good to know.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Hey, Jay, I've got a quick request for you. I have an email from Grant Willis, wanted to be able to check in. Can you forward him an invite or the links?
I already did that.
I'm in.
Oh, okay, Grant. Sorry. When I'm in present mode, I don't see any of the comments or anything, so I'm kind of stuck here. Thank you.
Nope.
Okay, good. but this, you know, GIO, they're doing some amazing work right now. Like I said, there's a lot of it, you know, we have anxiety, we have earthquakes, we have working from home, we got struggling, or not struggling, we're sort of juggling, you know, everything that's going on, but they're still keeping up with the publications, they're responding, they're getting social media stuff out. We had built a whole Arch Madness activity that we were going to do during the basketball tournaments. And they had built a set of pictures of 64 arches and natural bridges in Utah. And we're going to start pairing them off with votes from the public. And we were about to roll it out. And then the pandemic hit and the earthquake hit. And I guess at the governor's office, they decided we should not put that out this year.
Save it for next year.
Save it for next year. So we have a whole campaign that GIO built that's just beautiful, just amazing to look at. Our website activity, as you can imagine, just skyrocketed right after the earthquake. And the graph on the right are our website visits comparing February with March. And they're just, you know, how many went to our earthquake hazards webpage views? We went from 1,000 to 47,000. Utah faults, fault apps, total user visits. And then on the right, I made a graph on downloads. How many people downloaded Utah earthquakes and Q, meaning quaternary faults, Salt Lake County fault maps. A lot of interest peaked in March. So the good thing is we were able to handle it and that we had the information available. So a lot of this information is stuff I've been sharing with our legislature, and I'm hoping they keep this in mind when these budget, we anticipate some budget cuts may be coming. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball other than experience. But when we release earthquakes.utah.gov, I copied the press release and sent the link to all of the members of our appropriations committee. During the legislature, I showed all of them our hazards app, because these are tangible things that the survey does. And we just want to hope that they recognize that if they do start to cut our funding, then those tangible things start to be affected in our ability to deliver on them.
Good. Excellent.
Yep. So anyway, just trying to keep people informed. So as we start to talk about funding and budget and legislature, I'll probably say this several times today, but if you've got ins with people on our committee or elsewhere, we're asking for your help to, you know, reach out to legislatures that you know to try and look out for us to make sure, because at the point now where if we get enough funding for fiscal year 21 on these outside funds, we're only going to be able to use them if we can maintain the current staff that we have. Otherwise, if we lose these individuals, then we lose the outside funds as well.
Do you have a list of the senators and the representatives that are on the appropriate committees?
I can do that for our appropriate. I can send that.
Yeah.
And if you don't find from me, if you just go to le.utah.gov, that's the legislature, look up committees, but I'll put together a list for you.
Thank you.
And send it to you. Or I'll get someone to do that. Maybe I'll get Cheryl to do that. So good news was in the legislature, they approved we had originally proposed $600,000 of ongoing funds and $250,000 of catch-up and maintenance one-time funds. That was our proposal when we went to the governor's office. The governor's office came back to us and said, look, we'll support you asking the state legislature for $450,000 of one-time and $400,000 of one-time. Yeah, so $450,000 of ongoing and $400,000 of one-time. Still our full $850,000. The legislature approved $400,000 one-time and $400,000 ongoing. That's good news. The challenge, and again, we'll talk more about this, is that with this loss in revenue, I mean, just by deferring the state taxes from, April 15th today to July 15th, has hit their revenue stream. So they're starting meeting tomorrow to discuss these things. But for fiscal year 21, our budget's tight, but it will be manageable, we think. Jodi will talk more about that. I'll leave that to her. Fiscal year 21 will be a much bigger challenge, particularly with anticipated losses to mineral lease. When this first started, we had forecast 1.1 million, which was the basis for our request to the legislature of $850 million, and we got 800. And then when I wrote this, and in your documents it says 700,000, and I think as of today, Mike Vandenberg is forecasting it might drop down to 600,000. So that's a big drop.
Yeah.
That's $500,000 that we may take a hit. We have a good chance of taking a hit on. And so my concern here is if the legislature then imposes another cut on all of our budgets, this could be a double whammy for us, because these are funds they do not control. And so we're going to need that 400,000 at one time just to try and make up our loss here. We won't even be able to do a lot of our catch up stuff that we were going to do just to try and stay afloat here. But we do worry that they're going to ask us to cut our budgets, just to be aware. So we're going to need an all hands on deck effort to try and make sure that doesn't. But if they start to consider it, they realize that we're already taking a big hit via the mineral lease funds.
Well, and we also have such a large percentage of our budget dedicated to employee salaries and benefits that we don't have any place to trim without losing people.
You're right. We don't. We're about 87% funds go to personnel. Yep. Heavily leveraged there. So I'm going to turn this over to Jodi. Jodi, if this looks a little bit different, I turned into bullet points at Mike's suggestion. So I'm going to turn over to Jodi for a couple of minutes here to talk a little more detail.
Good morning. In your board packet that was emailed out, I had the forecast through February that I tried to quickly update with a few bits of information. And so it was showing a forecast of 166,000. However, last week I did all the billings for March and went through the whole forecast and had a few items that were significant changes. So Bill, can you advance to the forecast and bring that link up? Yeah, thank you. So this is the newly updated one that was not in your packet. Let's see, will it come up?
Can you not see it?
It's in the upper left-hand corner, really small.
Corner. Yeah.
Yeah, let me do something here. Let's see. I'm going to stop presenting and represent my screen. I think I was just sharing that item. One moment. Come on. There we go. Through my entire screen. There we go. There we go.
Yep.
How about that?
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. So as you see, we're forecasting about 250,000. However, it's been probably a week and a half ago. Well, first, let me back up. I still anticipate our revenue to come down just a little bit, depending on how much grant-funded field work our staff is able to do, given the COVID-19. There are a couple grants that are still questionable if we're going to be able to bring in all that revenue or not. And then also the bookstore is taking a significant hit, so their revenue is probably going to be less than what I currently have in this forecast. So say it comes down to maybe 200,000. Then there's currently a draft bill for the special session that would cut 150,000 from our current fiscal year 20 budget, and that would be returned to us next fiscal year 21. So if you look at this forecast, say we adjust for revenue another 50, then they take another 150, we may actually end up only having about 50,000 available to non-lapse into the next fiscal year. But we still survive. That is the goal this year, is to still survive. And the special session bill, they have it worded that the 150 that they would be cutting this year will be returned to us next year. So, this rolls over to the next year like we would be doing anyways. So bottom line, I believe we will make it through fiscal year 20. Fiscal year 21 next year, as Bill has mentioned, will be very interesting. He mentioned the new mineral lease revenue estimate is down to about 600K. We will need as much of our carry forward as possible. So if we could, maximize our authority of up to 200,000, that would be great. And then we're probably, like Bill mentioned, needing to use our newly appropriated 400K one time and ongoing to get through. As you saw, there are a lot of new grant proposals. So I believe our outside revenue is going to be significantly higher, I'm hoping, than in previous years. And not all grants require a one-to-one match. There are some that are only an 80-20 or 75-25. So if you look at our general fund, we have about 4.5 million in general fund. And so as long as we can maintain, at least that much, our outside funding, federal and dedicated credits, has never been much more than 2 million. So, as long as we don't get any further cuts, like Bill mentioned, that would result basically in staff most likely. And if we don't have staff to do the grant work, then we don't, we're forgoing outside funding. So it's really a double, triple hit. I think also in the packet there was a mineral lease report just on the current year budget, and we're still hoping to obtain the 1.1 million for this current fiscal year. There is that 3-month lag, so maybe June might be a little lower, but Mike Vandenberg thinks we're still on target for this current fiscal year mineral lease at 1.1 million. Any questions?
Pretty quiet. Again, I want to underscore this. We're good through fiscal year 20. The 21, like I said, we just don't know what these next 10 days of the legislature are going to look like, and that will be. And even then, even if they don't give us any cuts, and we use all of our new money, to get through the year, which would be fine. We'll still face this same problem in a year. Because if Mark is right, that this keeps going, it might take several years before that effort is turned around. We'll see, what's going on. And Uinta Basin is the bulk of federal lease revenue. So we don't know where that's going to go. It is interesting that we're not unique in this. I had a call from our Utah mining director, President of Utah Mining Association yesterday. The mining folks, particularly the coal miners, are looking for relief on federal royalties. Some of the oil companies might look for them as well.
So just real quickly,
Yes.
there's been a 30 million barrel per day demand destruction in March.
For Utah or the U.S.?
Worldwide.
Worldwide.
And so the OPEC Plus and others, including the U.S., who the United States government doesn't actually have the authority to dictate production. It's a state authority in states that have it. And the Texas Railroad Commission met yesterday to discuss this and had a really hectic meeting. Didn't resolve anything, but there were people from large oil companies and small on both sides of the issue, trying to get them to prorate production and assign people how much they could make per day. And other people saying, no, let the market take care of it. In Utah, the market's going to take care of it. I mean, it's already taking care of it. People are shutting in wells. There's no place there. We don't have as many places to go with the oil anyway. But the effort that was made to right the ship a little bit was 9.7 million barrels. And if you add in the US and a few other countries, Canada, a few other countries that aren't in OPEC or in OPEC Plus, that are going to either through regulation or through market effects reduce production significantly, you might put that number up to 14 or 15 million. That's half of what it needs to be to get rid of the overhang. I mean, the supply was already excessive before all of this stuff happened. The supply and demand were getting a little bit out of whack already, which is why prices had softened prior to the collapse. And honestly, this isn't going to get fixed until there's a vaccine. I think the economy in general isn't going to get fixed until there's a vaccine. But the oil business isn't going to get fixed until there's a vaccine. And maybe for quite a while after that, because it's just totally rearranging how everything is done in the oil business worldwide. Interestingly, China, which has started to recover to some extent, has bought its first load of liquefied natural gas from the US since last summer. And there are also countries, China and India, I believe, that are snapping up $7 and $8 oil or $20 oil to fill their tanks as much as they can, but it won't take long. I listened to a report yesterday on Oil and Gas Journal that said that right now there's 2 billion barrels of storage worldwide, and that it will be full by the end of this month. And so at the end of the month, anybody who's producing an oil well will not have any storage in a large facility, a refinery or a terminal or any place like that. So they'll fill the tanks on the location, and then they'll be forced to shut the well in. And Scott Sheffield, who's the president of Pioneer, yesterday said that we could be looking at oil as low as $3 when that happens. So this is just, I mean, it is what it is. We're just going to have to figure out how to get through it.
Bad news for us at the survey.
Yeah.
We'll have challenges.
And for the state, not just in terms of mineral lease money, but also for severance tax collections, and for the counties in terms of ad valorem property tax collections. I mean, everybody's going to be significantly impacted by this.
All the community impact boards. Those guys, they get a
well,
bulk.
That's all mineral lease money.
It is. They get the bulk of our money, of that money.
Yes.
So yeah, we're all concerned. We're all going to be looking for creative ways. You know, we may be reaching out to you as a board, you know, more frequently in the coming months as we start to get a clearer picture of what it's going to look like. Just trying to make sure you're aware of where we are and what's going on, and that we are aware of the issues. Okay. Anything else, Jodi?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. Just make sure I brought up your slides again. So I think we're good. I got this one for Mike Hillen.
Well, good morning, everybody. Just a quick summary of some of the bills that passed and that didn't pass out of this year's legislative session. We've already touched on the results of HB2, which gave us the 400,000 of one-time general funds and 400,000 ongoing for FY21, and we'll see how much of that survives the special session that kicks in tomorrow.
Yeah.
SB 19 basically authorized continuation of the funding that we get from the land exchange distribution account that facilitates our hydrogeologic monitoring out in the Snake Valley. So that had a repeal date of July 1, 2020, and that funding's been extended for another 10 years. Let's see, SB 3, as you recall, in the 2019 legislative session, we were appropriated $5 million for work on the Bonneville Salt Flats, and 4 million of that was reduced, but there's still a $1 million balance on that appropriation that will not lapse at the end of FY20. Representative, yeah, go ahead.
That 4 million reduction, you were kind of expecting that anyway, weren't you?
Yeah, we absolutely were expecting basically to not be able to use any of that funding. That funding was contingent on another, what, 45 million coming from the BLM. And so Representative Handy, who is the sponsor of the bill that generated the funding, he convinced the committee to give him a little bit more time to continue to work with the lobbyists and with BLM and try to make something happen. So that money is just kind of sitting there in the back pocket. We'll see if it, actually becomes available to us or not. Let's see. Yeah, we can go to the next slide, Bill. If there's any other questions on that. So those were bills that had a direct effect on us. There were a few others that don't have a direct effect, but we're interested in. One of them, HB 10, has to do with kind of restructuring two positions on the Utah Seismic Safety Commission. Up to this point, those had been designated as one member of the House and one member of the Senate, but it was very rare that anyone from the legislature would participate in USSC meetings. And so that's been changed, and those two members will be replaced by folks appointed by the director of DEM.
These guys might show up now.
Exactly. So yeah, no. So we're in favor of that move. SB 60, just an FYI. In addition to Senate consent for governor's nominees for, say, vacant UGS board membership positions, they want the Senate now to be able to provide advice on the front end as well regarding those nominees. It doesn't affect any of you folks, but it would affect successors.
What does that mean?
I think that all it means is that there will be some opportunity before the names are voted on for Senate folks to actually make some comments or suggestions about people.
Okay, so proposed nominees possibly.
Yes.
Okay.
So Mark, if I can
Does that
jump in,
make it more political?
Seems to me like it does.
potential. So remember when we had the Supreme Court nominations and the Senate's response was to advise and consent
Yes.
as opposed to consent? So the state here has decided to, before it was just consent, now they've added advise and consent.
Yeah, it can only have political effects within a very narrow range because we have to have political balance on the board.
Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of the parallel that I draw. Not that we're going to get any of the Supreme Court discussions, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
but that's the avenue they're looking for, is the opportunity to advise and consent.
Then the last things I wanted to mention were two bills that stalled in committee. One of them was the one that would have created Utahraptor State Park. So there are continuing discussions now with state parks and the governor's office, and we're involved in some of those discussions. So positioning for probably another bill in next year's session. And then Senator Hinkins had proposed a bill that would have transferred the College of Mines and Earth Sciences out of the University of Utah, transferred it to Utah State University Eastern. And I think part of the rationale was to generate job opportunities in rural parts of Utah. But that one did not fly.
Do you know what the vote was on it? I mean, was it close?
No, I don't think it.
Committee.
Yeah, it never got that far.
Okay.
I don't know what the committee votes were,
Yeah.
but it never got advanced. Never got what they call it.
Never got it.
This is Pete. I've always thought that there should be a closer tie, though, with Utah State University Eastern, just because the geologic environment out here is ideal for learning.
Yeah. And if you don't know, Utah State University Eastern is the old college of, what is it, Eastern Utah?
College of Eastern Utah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that's everything from this year's session.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, like that Utahraptor State Park, that consumed a lot of energy in the legislature this year. And and we were part of that discussion at all the hearings. Jim Kirkland testified a number of times, sitting alongside the state parks director, Jeff Rasmussen. There's a lot of interest to try and protect that. It came down to where do we find the 10 million that they needed to start up the park. But this will happen sooner or later.
Actually, there is one more thing. Next slide, Bill.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Just a concurrent resolution that it was nice to see, recognizing Mike Styler for all his years of service as DNR Executive Director.
Yeah. And Mike's now a candidate for Rob Bishop? No. Oakland, right?
There was some talk about that. I'm not sure that it happened.
I think he's announced. He's listed.
Oh, has he? Okay, good.
Yeah. Jeff Oakland, Ralph Oakland.
Ralph Oakland.
Ralph, who from Sevier County, he's on our subcommittee, and he's retiring. And so several people have stepped up for that. Okay.
Okay, that's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
So
Mike.
we've arrived at break time a few minutes early.
Yeah.
Do people want to take a break or keep pushing on? let's put it this way. Does anybody want to take a break?
How about a short break?
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break.
5-minute break. Okay, so Emily, when we get you back on here, do you want to just share your screen?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, don't
Oh,
forget.
that'll put us back at 10 o'clock.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Jay, Hill, are you there?
Right here.
Hey, did you check our YouTube stream?
Yeah, I've been checking it periodically.
Good, okay, just want to make sure it's working. And Mark Milligan. You might be away, okay.
Mark Milligan's not here.
Not? He had an invite, he accepted it. Okay, I had an email from him. Okay. Hey, Grant, is Grant on here? Yep.
Yeah, I've been listening in, Bill.
So you missed another earthquake.
Yeah, I heard that. I just can't win.
You can't.
That's a pretty amazing one you had in Idaho a couple of weeks ago that didn't do any damage, isn't it?
Yeah, that's been really interesting. I've been in on a couple of web chats and following the emails with the Idaho survey people and Boise State and others. And talk about a challenging situation. Not only is there 6 feet of snow up in there still, and it snowed 2 feet the night after the earthquake, so that covered every surface evidence. But, they have to drive right through Blaine County to get there, which has the highest COVID-19 rate in the entire nation as a percentage. And so it's been a very frustrating thing for the Idaho people to even go up and have a look at it. They did do a couple of overflights. The most interesting thing I've seen is a big avalanche / rockfall ran down into the middle fork of the Salmon River and created a temporary dam.
Oh, cool.
And that dam lasted for somewhere between 6 and 12 hours before it overtopped or broke through. So it did create a little outburst flood that went down the middle fork, but fortunately nobody lives there. There's nothing there. So other than a few trees or something, I don't think it hurt anything, and probably was very dispersed by the time it got down to the main salmon. Anyway, it's been an interesting one to follow.
My wife's family ranch in Fairfield, which is in Camas County, and they felt it and had things knocked off the shelves and things like that. But I looked for damage reports, and even in Stanley, there weren't any significant issues. So pretty hard to believe you could have a 6.5 magnitude earthquake fairly shallow and get away with it.
Yeah, well, I expect when a lot of those summer home people come back, they're going to find some chimneys knocked down and some fireplace or stonework damage, things like that. I think there's more damage than we know. And there was a little bit of damage even clear over in Boise.
Yeah.
Some of the old URM buildings, of course, again. Yep. And they did have a little damage there. So, yeah, I think gradually the word is going to trickle in, and we'll start to hear of a few more things.
Well, is everybody back? We're at 10 o'clock, 10:01 actually.
Okay.
If you're not here, speak up.
I'm here.
Okay, so Emily?
Yep. Should I go ahead and get started?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, let me start presenting.
So while she's getting started, this is Emily. She works on our hazards group, and I think she does everything earthquakes.
That's about it.
It's a lot.
Okay. Sorry, I have a Mac and there's some argument that seems to be going on with all the different things I have open, so. Okay. Okay, looks like you all can see my screen.
We can.
Okay, good. And then I found out recently that there's a pointer option. So I'm going to use this little red dot to try and point at things. So I'm not just gesticulating at my screen. Yeah, so thanks, Bill. Thanks to the board for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I've been with UGS for about 4.5 years. My background is in geology and earthquake geology. I have a bachelor's of science from University of California, Davis, and master's of science from Arizona State University, where I was working on paleoseismology. And I have a background in LiDAR data analysis related to faults and earthquakes. So it's been really fun being here at UGS. I really enjoy the work that we get to do in the hazards department. And this has been quite an exciting time for me professionally and scientifically. But I will say, I really hope this is the only earthquake I ever respond to in Utah of this magnitude. I don't really want the big one to come. I don't think, I think that would, be a completely life-altering event, even more than what we're going through right now. So I wanted to share some of the ongoing work that we've been doing in the hazards group. So I'm presenting work that's being done, collaboratively, led by Steve Bowman and all the folks in the hazards group. So we've been, dealing with the social distancing as best we can, trying to stay in touch. And I think we have some cool stuff to show you. So first, just a little background on the earthquake itself. This is a USGS shake map. So this is a product that is generated, within minutes after an earthquake of a certain magnitude. It's basically the first glimpse that everyone has, the public, emergency responders, scientists, about what we're dealing with the earthquake. So the map is showing northern Utah area, and it's colored by the intensity. So basically how much shaking the seismic instruments are experiencing. And then if you can see in the map itself, these small little gray triangles, those are the actual seismic stations. So yeah, there's a lot of information here, but the basics that we get is the magnitude, which is a 5.7, the depth, which is about 12 kilometers, and which is fairly deep earthquake, and some of the accelerations that the seismometers were experiencing. So those are helpful for the engineering community in thinking about buildings and in thinking about how critical infrastructure could be impacted from this earthquake. There was a cool video. Let's see if this works. I might have to, I might just skip this. This is a really neat video though, showing how seismometers from the IRIS organization, which is a seismological group supported by the National Science Foundation. I'll send that in an email afterwards, but I have a lot of slides, so but it's just a really cool visual of showing how the earthquake kind of rippled through the whole United States seismic network. Just as a way to show that the Earth had its bell rung by this really moderate-sized earthquake. So we're still in what's considered an earthquake sequence. So the 5.7 is still considered to be the main shock of this earthquake. And then we have had lots of aftershocks since then, including one last night that we were all talking about before this presentation. And that would plot right. This graph only goes to the 13th, which was Monday. So the seismograph stations, they're taking the lead on reporting on the aftershocks, locating these earthquakes, and making the data available to the public and to UGS as quickly as possible. So they've been a really great partner. They have a lot of work to do because the seismic instruments feel the earthquakes, but then there's a lot of processing that goes on afterwards to locate really precisely where the earthquakes happened, and then also to kind of identify as many earthquakes as possible within the waveforms that are sensed or that are recorded by the seismic instruments. So, and then just a fun thing about this aftershock that we had last night is that there were already 8,000 responses on the USGS Did You Feel It report when I checked this morning. And then for the main shock, there's over 36,000, which I think, as a board and as UGS, we need to be thinking those are people that want information. So there's a lot of interest right now in having scientific information and having it being digestible. It sounds like we're going to talk about that later too, which is because it's really, really important. So the day of the earthquake, Bill talked a little bit about what we did as the hazards group. We kind of separated into 3 different teams. Bill talked about the Emergency Operations Center and getting that set up. We also established a clearinghouse, which is essentially just in these days, a website where people can put photos, information, basically stuff as it comes up that might be relevant to ongoing field efforts, to emergency operations and things like that. And then we also had some field teams go out and look for the geologic effects of this earthquake. So we were really all hands on deck pretty much right away. And it was really fun to be a part of it. So I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about what each of these groups did. So Bill kind of covered what we did the day of, and this was mostly what Steve was doing. We made sure that the EOC communications were set up at the UGS office, which is all radio based. Although the irony is that when Steve was driving down to the UGS, I was calling him on the phone to try and figure out how to turn on the radio. So in a real event, in a larger magnitude event where we wouldn't have communications, there's a full guideline, excuse me, guideline for how to start up these communications. So we have several different options to start communicating right away. And then there was a lot of communicating or coordinating requests as they came in. Bill mentioned the press conference that Steve was a part of. I actually went down to the Salt Lake County Emergency Operations Center and gave a briefing to the Mayor Jenny Wilson and other people who were responding to their first earthquake as emergency responders. So that was a good chance to be like, hey, this is what's going on. That happened after the 4.6 aftershock that we had the day of the earthquake. So aftershocks, I think, are going to be a really important topic for us to talk about as scientists moving forward, because they're certainly rattling nerves, that's for sure. Another thing is that Gordon Douglas has been updating this really nice interactive map of earthquake epicenters, and I think the teal one is the main shock. The purple one is a historic earthquake that happened in 1962 in the Magna area. This is getting a lot of attention, like Bill talked about. And again, people are just like, they just are eating up all this information. So it's really cool that we already have a lot of stuff put together, and that we are probably going to be putting out some more stuff pretty soon. So next, we had field reconnaissance teams. This is a map showing sort of the areas of our efforts. I'll use my little pointer. So the blue lines are the areas where we drove around to just like look for liquefaction, for surface fault rupture. This earthquake magnitude and depth ended up really not yielding many geologic effects because it was so deep. So the fault, rupture area wasn't quite big enough to propagate to the surface. The blue polygons show where Rich Giroux spent some time looking for earthquake-induced rockfalls or landslides. So he spent a lot of time out doing that. He also did some reconnaissance along the Jordan River to look for lateral spread and liquefaction features, as well as out by the salt air and Salt Lake Marina, as well as just east of the tailings ponds. So this is just along the Jordan River. You can see Rich Giroux here, a small lateral spreading feature, because of these water-laden sediments getting shaken and sort of failing down into the Jordan River. Out by the salt air, and these are still there if you do want to go see them. Out by the salt air, there are several sand volcanoes that came out, kind of bubbling out of man-made fill. And so these are definitely liquefaction features, really interesting to see. We also did UAS surveys of all of these little sort of lighter colored spots we think are these sand volcanoes, but they're subaqueous. So sort of more evidence for liquefaction, and these sort of longer wavelength movements that these big massive piles of wet sand on the surface or below the surface experienced. There's some more here. So there's this kind of dark golden color microbial mat, and then all of these light colored spots we believe to be more sand volcanoes. So the bottom left of the photo is basically the road to get to the Salt Lake Marina. These are some lateral spread induced cracks on the road to the Salt Lake Marina. I texted Allison, who is the state parks ranger out at the marina. She has been noticing that the week of the earthquake, these cracks were expanding, but since then, apparently the expansion has stopped. So some road damages out there to some state lands. And then additionally, these are sailboats here. You can see the keel. Down here, there are some cracks that happened out by the sort of warehouse area of the marina. We also saw some really interesting desiccation cracks sort of related to shaking. We're still kind of trying to think about these and figure them out. Okay, so I'll try and wrap it up and cover a little bit of what our clearinghouse activities were. Again, a clearinghouse is established pretty quickly after an event as a way to communicate out the scientific information that is being gathered. So,
Hey, Emily,
yeah.
hey, you've got a few extra minutes since we're ahead. Don't feel rushed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, take your time. This is good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, yeah, and I'll be happy to answer questions too.
Okay, thanks.
Along the way. So yeah, thank you, Bill. So the clearinghouse, the earthquake happened at 7:09. We have practiced sort of creating and uploading to a digital clearhouse before. This is something that Steve Bowman has taken a big lead on, and this is a really, like I said, it's a really important thing that we have. I think it's even like a mandate that the UGS has to do after an earthquake. So this is our responsibility, and I think we've done a really good job so far. So within 3 hours of the main shock, there was a digital clearinghouse available. This is the shake map is the first image that was added to the clearhouse. So over the course of the following days and then weeks, all of our field photos made it into that clearinghouse. I think we're up to almost 600 photos or articles that have been posted into the clearinghouse. By this point, we even had, we did a call to the public to add photos of damage or any kind of earthquake impacts that they noticed. And these were all reviewed before they were posted. And there was actually a really good response for this. So we have, it's not just people that are geologists. These are people who are like, hey, this is an important thing to document. So, I think it follows the Utah spirit of, people wanting to have good information and wanting to be part of this together. So that was really, I think, really cool to see that we had that strong response. And then another thing that we've been doing, and this has been really led by Adam McKean, is thinking about the geologic context of these earthquakes. So Adam McKean has been leading an effort to kind of think critically about what fault these earthquakes are happening on, or at this point, what faults these earthquakes, the main shock and then aftershock, are happening on. He's been sort of getting folks together to talk about this. And like Bill mentioned, we're going to be talking with the University of Utah seismograph stations tomorrow to share this work and sort of continue trying to think about what this earthquake means geologically, and then what it will mean in terms of hazard in the future. So Adam spent a lot of time putting 8 recent UGS maps together. He said that the Tooele 30 by 60 quad was a really big help in this. And then he spent a lot of time on the West Valley fault zone. So having good geologic context from the surface, as well as constraints of where we've had surface fault rupturing earthquakes in the Quaternary has been really helpful for his efforts. Adam also spent some time with Christian Hartwick to kind of get at what geophysical data is available in the area. So this is the end product of sort of the beginning of a process where he and Christian are looking at the available gravity data. Christian is working on a new model depth bedrock model using more recent geophysical data to try and get at which fault is possible. So on the left side, you can see the earthquake epicenters that are plotted along with the Bouguer gravity anomaly map. So this is draft data that Christian's been working on. The middle is showing sort of the fault mapping in that area and sort of the potential players at which fault that protrudes onto the surface, or at least has a geophysical expression, could be at fault. Pardon my pun. And then the right diagram sort of has them all put together. And then everything that's in bold are sort of their suspect faults. I think, let's see. And again, Adam is the expert on this, and he's been doing a really good job. So, you know, I appreciate his efforts here. So yeah, basically the question is there's lots of faults. A few of them have been sort of, we don't think that they think that they're possibly related to these earthquakes. And the thinking right now, and this is an ongoing conversation, is that it's probably either sort of on the Listric Wasatch fault zone. So it's at about, the fault plane that ruptured is maybe at about a 29-degree dip, which is pretty interesting. And it also could be related to what's been called the Saltair Graben, which was identified by Ivan Wong as a geophysical structure from doing a report on the tailings piles and what the sort of seismic risk of those tailings piles, or what could be the seismic risk to those tailings piles. And so this last slide from Adam is showing a few cross sections, A to A prime, B to B prime, C to C prime. So A to A prime is just going straight east-west, and he's projecting with no vertical exaggeration potential models of what fault systems these earthquakes could be on. And then B to B prime goes through the average strikes of the moment tensor diagrams. So those are calculated from the seismic data. And then C is approximately perpendicular to the West Valley Fault. But again, ongoing work. Also really interesting that the main shock has seemed to trigger the West Valley Fault zone with some aftershocks that were felt, I think, maybe like a week and a half ago. I know that people have been feeling those because I've been getting text messages about them, and people are not having fun with those at all. So again, ongoing work, but really cool to be part of this. And yeah, a lot of really important work from just the great geologic mapping that we do. And then just to sort of emphasize that this is a group effort, you know, we've all been helping GIO with their social media support. GIO has been doing a fabulous job reaching out to people that have questions. Facebook, Twitter, I think, are probably the main mediums for that. Getting people just calling and asking questions. All of us have had public inquiries related to this, and we've been sort of excited to be part of this response. So in terms of public outreach, and specifically to that submission process for the clearinghouse, you can see that we reached quite a few people, and I think had pretty good results with how many people were actually contributing to our clearinghouse. So it's cool to not only put the outreach out there, but actually get information back. And then finally, I wanted to talk a little bit and remind everyone about the structure of the Utah Earthquake Program. And basically at the center of that is this Utah Seismic Safety Commission. Mike was mentioning that earlier in terms of changing commissioners, but we are a really big part of this group. And moving forward, I think the UGS has a really important opportunity to continue doing important outreach in the terms of the science, but there's going to be a lot of questions that are coming that people will want to know, about their brick homes, about the UM problem, about schools and stuff like that. So if we run into those kind of problems, we need to make sure that we have the best scientific information, but just know that we're part of a greater organization that's really been trying to talk about our earthquake hazard in Utah for a long time. And it might be worth it to note that Bob Carey, who's the earthquake program manager for the Utah Department of Emergency Management, called this the designer earthquake. So it's not too big to cause a lot of damage, not too small that people will forget about it. People are not going to forget about this earthquake. So moving forward, I think we have some cool opportunities to continue doing a good job. But I also think this is a new opportunity for us to think of innovative ways to discuss this event with people and giving them the best information. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Anybody have questions or comments?
I have a question. Actually, I have two questions. You mentioned briefly the tailings pile.
Yep.
Was there any damage to the top of that pile that anybody noticed?
So we were not able to get access to the tailings piles themselves. We were east of the tailings piles. I've heard that they had some liquefaction, so they had some sand boils and some cracks, but as to the extent, I'm not sure, and I don't know how they plan to disseminate that information.
Second part of my question is, do you think that the mass of that pile, which is very large, had anything to do or could have anything to do with triggering a quake underneath it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because there's a lot of material there. And we've talked about this in our hazards group meetings. Yeah. But I think at this point, given the depth of the earthquake, fairly deep at about 12 kilometers, we don't think so. We would expect to see a much shallower event if it was induced. But great question.
Thanks.
If there were a shallower earthquake, say 5 kilometers, what would be the result as far as land, as far as shaking movement?
Yeah, so in that case, I mean, the magnitude, you can think of it as, it's the energy that's being released on the earthquake, by the earthquake, but it's kind of proportional to the surface of the actual fault plane that breaks. So if you think of that as kind of like a patch on a big plane, if you move that patch up, then you're so much closer to the surface. So yeah, I think we'd expect to see a lot more superficial effects, more liquefaction, possibly surface fault rupture. So it definitely would not have been, I would probably be saying a very different thing in terms of the designer of earthquake. But yeah, good question.
So the epicenter of the 1962 earthquake was not too far from the epicenter of this earthquake. What was the depth in 1962?
I don't know exactly, and another thing is that I don't think the depth is very well constrained on that earthquake.
Yeah.
I think it was deep though. I think it was within the range of, like if you just like zoom around in the little map that Gordon made, I think it's within that area. So I don't think that they would consider that a foreshock because it was so many years before, but again, ongoing work.
Yeah, and also a big chunk of the tailings pile was there in 1962 also.
Yeah.
That's not all new. So.
Yeah, Jay just sent did I get it wrong? The teal one is the 1962 earthquake. Thanks, Jay. So yeah, if you want to look around at that.
Hey, Emily, I'll pull up this 3D view right now.
Sure. Any other questions?
Hey, just a quick question. I noticed out there at Saltair, those sand volcanoes, sand boils that occurred. On the intensity scale you showed earlier, it looked like it was kind of in that intensity, I forget the numbers 4 or 5, but kind of correlated to a peak ground acceleration of 19% or thereabout, if the intensity correlation held out. And I thought that was interesting because that type of ground motion is not terribly high compared to what we use in our design for bridges, for buildings. And so it shows that kind of confirms that liquefaction really is a significant risk here in the valley, because we designed for higher values than that. And so seeing that it happened, and that the PGA values were kind of in that lower range of 19% or so, I thought that was interesting. That's neat confirmation to the design world out there that is happened. So that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and thanks for chiming in with that. I know it's, earthquake science is still a very young discipline. I consider myself an earthquake geologist, so I look at the signature of earthquakes in the geologic record, and the seismologists really are the ones that are able to tell us the most about the earthquakes. So we're hoping, sort of combining the ideas and knowledge of all of the scientists within the Wasatch and within Utah and beyond, we'll be able to have a lot more information about how to improve our seismic hazard models going forward. A big part of that is understanding what the PGAs are.
So I brought up Gordon's 3D model. Hopefully you can all see that.
Yep.
And this dark magenta, whatever color that is down here, that's the 5.7. This teal one here is the Magna from 1962.
Oh, okay, good.
And I think it was about 7 kilometers, if I remember.
Those black lines are 1 kilometer depth each.
That's right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, somewhere in there. Yep.
Yeah, Bill?
Yes.
If you click over on the right at the bottom of the menu there, the area of interest, if you click that off, then you can click on the event itself and it'll open up a table with some data. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
7.
Quake elevation minus 5,682. Okay.
Cool. Any other questions about the presentation? Great. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, we need you for the next section too.
Yeah, well, happy to participate.
So to kind of come back, Adam's cross section, where this might be the Wasatch, and this would be your West Valley fault zone. Just kind of his thoughts. Anyway, I just thought you might enjoy that. Stop sharing.
Well, it's a good thing when your energy aspect turns to dirt.
Yeah.
God throws you an earthquake. Pretty good.
Let's go back to sharing.
I'd like to talk a little bit about what our role should be going forward as a result of this. I mean, obviously, it's increased interest in earthquakes in Utah. It's a whole bunch of people that probably didn't realize that this sort of thing could happen very easily here now are aware of it and getting increasingly nervous as they experience 4 magnitude aftershocks a month later. And back in 2006, the state's earthquake people published a 36-page newspaper sort of thing in color called "Putting Down Roots in Earthquake Country," and it's still available online. We used to have a pile of them in the bookstore. I've probably given 30 of them to people that I know. over the years. There's a whole bunch of new data now that we would have, and I'm wondering, what got me thinking about this is whether it would be a good idea to update that and put it out digitally. I think a lot of people would be interested in it, and I've sent it to people just since this earthquake who wanted an explanation of what's going on in Utah, because it's got some dated information in it, but most of what's in there is pretty decent still. And I guess the question is, what the other people think we should be doing. We have an educational mission, absolutely. We're part of the triumvirate of agencies that have responsibilities in this area and that should probably cooperate on something like this, and did cooperate on the, this was the Seismic Safety Commission, actually, I think, that published this. And what other things could we do? Capabilities on the internet are a lot different now than they were in 2006. How much of a commitment do you want to make to this, and be interested in what other people, board members and staff people, think we should be doing, because I think this is potentially an opportunity to heal up some of the financial issues, maybe with the legislature.
Mark, I just wanted to reiterate that, yes, it is probably very important to republish roots. And just for some context, there's a publication subcommittee that has been established at the Utah Seismic Safety Commission, including myself and Steve Bowman.
Great.
And I think maybe even like the day before the earthquake, that committee met and we talked specifically about roots, about sort of dividing out the different areas that need to be updated within the document. So there is active work going on there from the UGS as well as with other partners. I think I'm the one taking the lead on that to try and sort of ask people to do that kind of work. And I see Steve just joined the call too. We're talking about updating, putting down roots. So that's in the works. We've also been talking about publishing, putting down roots in other foreign languages, particularly in Spanish. So that I think will happen after we do the main update, since it will take some time to find those services and also find funding for those services. So for right now, we're working on it. If we have your support, then that's really great. Moving forward with that.
I guess another question is, what about using this opportunity as the focus for an effort to get out into the schools more directly when they finally get back in session in September of whatever year. But I mean, I'm just wondering if we want to make more of an effort to interact directly with school kids. And Alyssa maybe has some comments about how that might be done, or the efficacy of it would be. But it seems to me that that's a good way to get to parents as well, is to start with their kids, who are easier to corral.
I do have some comments, and I do represent the public at large, and I also lead an energy education nonprofit nationally. And from my perspective, there were a couple things that happened that I thought was very interesting as I observed this, because I am familiar with earthquakes. I was raised around earthquakes, earthquake science, but I was in the middle of a meeting, and that false information came through to a colleague on my meeting, and he says, "We have to end this meeting right now and go move your cars outside. We're having another big one." And I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute. What are you guys talking about?" And so it was actually being propagated on local media. And And I'm like, you guys go to the UGS or let's look at the UVU seismograph station. This isn't accurate. And so I think there's an opportunity to educate the media and an opportunity in schools, because right now everybody's talking about the safety aspects, which is the primary, but also there needs to be a little bit more, because you talk about a knowledge or an information clearinghouse. There are so many places people are going, and I do appreciate the UGS, and Emily, I thought that was a fascinating and very well done presentation. How we do need to get this out to teachers. And I mean, it could be done through the best way to get through, I think one of the best ways to educate the general public is to educate their kids and then have their kids educate them. Their kids are catalysts. Students are catalysts in the homes. So you could actually create some knowledge and some really great multiplier effect education that way. But there definitely is an opportunity, and there's a need for pointing people in the right direction of accurate science, scientific websites and information. That's a big problem that I personally experienced with some of my colleagues. So.
Well, and I think you brought up another group that needs to be educated as well, and that's the news media.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Mark this, Steve Bowman.
My wife's a geophysicist, and we thought that Lindsay Storrs did a pretty good job with this while it was happening, actually, on the day it happened, and she sent her a complimentary email. But man, there's a lot that could be done there fairly quickly. And Steve just sent me a little note that the problem with trying to get out to all these people is that we're spread pretty thin. However, this is an area where we might be able to get volunteers to participate in train some people to make these presentations or whatever, and then have them do it. I mean, I'm totally retired as of this month.
Hey, Mark this, Steve.
I worked 90 hours in February and none so far since the 1st of March. But and I actually had a career in I worked for a company in Boston called Western Geophysical Research when I first got out of college, and had a several-year career in seismology, having to do with the design of nuclear power plants, what the design earthquake would be for nuclear power plants. And
Mark this, Steve. There is a project that the Seismic Safety Commission has going on to evaluate the seismic safety of individual school buildings.
Yeah.
There was about $100K that was appropriated about 3 years ago to the commission and the USOE, the Office of State Education. And that project is almost done. It just needs to be written up.
Great. Good. Well, while you're here, I'd like to compliment you for your job under fire on the day of the earthquake. I watched that news conference and thought you represented us quite nicely. So.
Oh, thanks. It was very busy times with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just worry that when the big one comes, the bridge at the bottom isn't going to allow you to get from Camas to Salt Lake City.
Well, one of the mission assignments for the National Guard may be to pick me or a few other people up here in the back valleys and get us on the other side. That is on the list.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, yes. that'd be, yeah, that's great. Yep.
Good. So any outcomes out of this? Any go forwards that you guys want to come up with? I guess I'm looking for specific things I can put in our notes. Any assignments you want us to walk away with as a board, or that you want to walk away with?
I would recommend maybe even some sort of like you said, Lindsay Storrs did a good job. I think the media, even a real, some sort of a training for the media, or just an open house where you basically went through some of the science and gave them the resources of what they can find, that they can quickly access, so that they're actually accessing accurate information. I think that's critical.
I would like to offer the media, television and newspapers, including some of the local newspapers, a training session that would be a place to introduce the people who can squash the lies and give them a way to get a hold of make sure that that somebody at each of these TV channels and radio stations and newspapers knows who to call or who to email when there's an event to get the truth, because this, this other stuff isn't going to go away. So you just got to figure out a way to stomp on it as early as you can. So I think that's a smaller task than trying to figure out what to do with the schools or trying to republish routes. So I think that's something that try and put a bit of a time priority on it, especially after having another, aftershock last night. I didn't feel it at my house in Park City, but my next door neighbor called me up right after it happened, and he was on the third floor of his house, and my wife and I were on the ground floor of our house, and that's probably maybe the difference. Because I definitely felt I was sitting in the same place as I was at 7:09 on the 18th, and I definitely felt that when it moved my house laterally. Seemed like back and forth 2 or 3 times. And so I think that would be an immediate or short-term focus on. And then I think the other thing I would rely on Emily and Steve and Adam and the other people that are heavily involved in this to push forward with that and just say, if there's anything I can do to help with it, I'd be happy to do that. And I think there probably are, a number of us who would be willing to volunteer in making presentations and that sort of thing.
Hey, Mark,
we could.
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, sorry, it's just kind of tricky with this way. We could put together a short, 1-2 hour training for the media on that. That would be pretty doable. And then just so you're aware, we were planning January, February 2021 of having a new seismic hazards summit, but because of all this, we postponed it to January 2022. And at that, there would be opportunities for the media like there was in 2015.
I think we have an opportunity to make headway with these people because they're engaged right now.
Yep.
And in 2022, if there hasn't been another event that shakes them up a little bit, they won't be as interested as they are right now.
Oh, I agree. It's just I'm saying as a follow-on to this initial training.
No, I agree.
Right. So this is Mark with a K, and I'm with GIO at UGS.
Yeah.
I'm Public Information Officer. And we've been talking with Nathan Schwabach, who's the PIO for DNR, and he's a real PIO in that he's not a geologist, he's trained in communications. And some of the issues he's seeing with it, it's hard to educate the media by doing an outreach one-time event like this, because most reporters, especially on television and such, in their jobs, or at least in their beats for very long. So if you educate people that are there today, in 6 months, it's going to be entirely different.
Yeah.
So some of the things he's recommending is to do annual or biannual. And this, I would hope, would be at the department level even, because other divisions have similar needs. Media briefings. So we would invite media to DNR, presumably, or go to them as another option, and basically have a Q&A session with whoever is there on staff each year. So that was one of the things he suggested. Another thing was to leverage the Great Shakeout, which is tomorrow. So that wouldn't be for future years. Leverage Great Shakeout, because that's a regular reoccurring event, again, because people aren't in their beats very long. And then also further develop long-lasting fact sheets and stuff that are fact sheets, infographics, that type of things that are ready to go when there's an event, sent out immediately. We have the information generally on our webpage, but it would be good to have it in a different format so we can just shoot it out to media after an earthquake or landslide or whatever it may be. So those are just some of the ideas that he had. And anything that's done, of course, it has to be done with UUSS and USGS and DEM, because we're only one part of the puzzle.
So to focus it a little better and to maybe not have to do it every 6 months, does it make sense to pitch it at the weather, at the meteorology people, because some of them have scientific backgrounds, not all of them, but some of them. And they are probably the go-to people. But the other thing is that they tend to have longer tenure than the local reporters do on the local TV channel.
That's a good question.
The weather people we have here have been here, most of them been here on TV here for more than 10 years.
Yeah, that would be a question for Nathan more than me. I mean, I think it's a good idea, but I don't know that answer for sure.
Okay. Any other comments? I appreciate your comments, Mark. That's helpful. I'm glad to know that stuff's going on.
Thank you.
Mark, this is Pete. I just agree with your idea of targeting the meteorologists because they have more of a scientific background. Or can, anyway.
Yeah. On Channel 2, it was Chase last night that was talking about it, the meteorologist on the 10 o'clock news.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might just make a comment about the earthquakes.utah.gov site, in that part of our hope, I guess, is that website, as it becomes more kind of broadly known by the media and the general public, is that'll be the place where people will go. You know, we've got dozens and dozens of frequently asked questions available there, and they're easily searchable. And then there's a page of recent posts. So, you know, right after the aftershock last night, we were working with Jodi over at DEM, and we got a post up on the aftershock right away. So that hopefully that'll be a vehicle to kind of, you know, provide objective, scientifically based information to whoever wants to access it. Also want to mention, so on the day of the magnitude 5.7, I had Fox 13 on pretty much all day long. And Max Roth, he's a reporter that I'd kind of lost track of, but he's been in Utah for at least a couple decades. And he actually, just on his own, brought up onto the screen a story map that we had put together and have on the UGS website, showing kind of our, giving background on our paleoseismic studies on the Wasatch Fault Zone. And it has a little animation that you can scroll through that shows ruptures at different times. And so that I was pleased to see that at least one reporter knew where to go for good geologic information and actually used it in his reporting. So I was encouraged by that.
Yeah. So Bill, I think the message, if anybody, it's hard to do this without being able to see everybody, but if you don't agree with this, speak up. But I think the message from the board is let's try and figure out something for the news media fairly soon. And let's be working on the alternatives, and let's keep in mind that that we have people at the survey who are extremely well equipped to deal with these things. And, you know, we've got, I don't want to politicize this in any way, but we've got an opportunity to raise our profile publicly a little bit here. And the timing of that isn't terrible for us. So we should go with that.
Agreed. Okay.
Is there a chance we could get maybe a presentation or some materials that we could give anyone who's willing to go out and speak to schools or service organizations or county governments or city governments, whatever, that we could have a fairly standard presentation, maybe something, maybe it's already exists, it sounds like it probably does, from the UGS, that any of us could go out and give that presentation.
What's the timing, Emily, do you think or Steve, on being able to integrate the new data into the sorts of information we'd want to give out? I mean, are we looking at 6 months or a year, or is it quicker than that?
I would think we could pull something together, you know, easily mid-May, in that range.
Okay. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
yeah, I think so too. I think Just from like since I've moved to Utah, I've been doing these kind of presentations, going to libraries, just trying to appreciate the nuance of this message. And yeah, since we have this opportunity, I think it's good to take it. But I think it's also important that we have talking points and that we have, like you're talking about, like one communicated message.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the thing is, we want to make sure that we're answering the questions that we can. I often find that I get questions I can't answer from people because we communicate the hazard, but we don't determine the risk. And so I think that's really important to emphasize is that we can help people understand the hazard, but they have to help themselves to understand the risk.
Okay, so if I'm going to come up with some takeaways, is one, we as a survey will help try to get together a PowerPoint of some sort or a document sheet that we can share, and then we will make that available for anybody, including members of the board, that would like to get out and use it. So that's our takeaway for this, right?
Yes.
Okay, good discussion.
All right. Thank you very much, people who participated in that. Now we're on to the last thing on the agenda, which is electing a new chair. And I've been the chairman, I think, for 6 years. I'd have to go look to be sure, but I've been it for quite a while. And part of the reason for that was that shortly after I became the chairman, we had another price collapse similar to the one that we're having right now, only not quite as bad. And that's when we started having to make decisions about people and about travel and all sorts of things. In December of 2014, after the November 30th price collapse for oil, Rick Gallis took pretty quick action to limit the damage. I mean, we didn't have a board meeting then, but we talked about it and basically agreed that that if we did things to cut costs right away, and it turned out that this was just a blip on the radar screen, and by March everything was great again and prices were back up and mineral lease money was flowing like water, that we could undo them very much more easily than we could wait until we got in really deep trouble and then impose those. And so I had pretty decent relationships with people in the legislature at that stage, and we made presentations to the legislature. Several of us did, and so I've kind of stuck around in this job for a while because that oil and gas has been an important part of the survey's revenue, and it's going to be a lot less important here for a while now. But my term ends a year from now, next March, I believe. And so I would like to have somebody else take over the chairmanship because I've been the chairman for so long. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be available, but I'd like somebody else to be the chairman so that we have a smooth transition through what is going to be a very challenging time for us now. I mean, I had this feeling before I realized how bad things are going to be. But so I'd like to, give people an opportunity to express an interest or nominate people. I mean, I honestly don't remember how we did this the last time, but basically, I would like to help whoever the next chairman and vice chairman are through the transitions on if they want the help or if they can use the help, and like to hear what people have to say.
This is Pete. I just wanted to say, Mark, you did a fabulous job through that tough spot, and I think we're all beholden to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You're not beholden to me, but thank you.
So Mark, just on that end, from what I've seen, in all the legislation stuff, it basically says the board selects a chairman.
That's correct.
That's what I think. That's
we
all.
We have voted on it in the past. The question that I don't remember is I honestly don't remember whether Rick Alice came to me and said, you know, would you be interested in being chairman, or whether I kind of think we sat down around a table. My immediate predecessor was Bill Lockland. And I kind of think we sat around a table and discussed it and then voted on it.
That's
correct.
my
You did
recollection.
vote on it.
That we voted that's how we did it. It was a group of, it was a nomination and then a vote of the board.
Okay. Is there anybody that's particularly interested in being chairman, or anybody who would like to nominate somebody else to be chairman? Peter, you've been the vice chairman. Is it something you want to do?
I have the same tenure as you do, so it should
Oh, do
be.
you?
Yeah, so it should be someone who's going to be carrying forward into the next term, and I won't be.
Who else is leaving the board next March? Melissa, you're still around?
I just got reinstated.
So you got
Okay, so you've got a while to go yet.
Yeah, I have a while to go, and I would be willing to help out. I don't have the science background that you all have and the connections. I mean, I really am representing the public at large, and so I'm willing to help or do what have the geology connection. So
You didn't get it from osmosis? Or?
well, I got some. I should say I do. I have a minor in it, but I have some, but not like you guys.
Can I make a dual nomination?
Certainly.
I would nominate Ken for chair and Elise for vice chair.
Any discussion?
Are you talking about me, Pete?
I am. I am.
Talking about me.
I don't feel like I have the good enough financial background or legislative background. I feel like I'm really deficient in both of those areas.
I'm not sure.
If it helps throughout my whole tenure, I felt the same as a vice chair. I'm glad that Mark was there.
Yeah.
Sure that the legislative thing is as big a deal as it used to be. The staff has a much better handle on that now than they did back earlier. I mean, Mike's got a significant role to play in that, and Bill knows Bill's good at that. I mean, I don't see that that's an issue, but I also, Elisa, I don't think you need to be a degree geologist to be the chairman of the board of the Geological Survey, personally. It's more being able to direct things and synthesize things and provide a sounding board for Bill and some of the staff once in a while. And you've got executive experience.
I'd be willing to help. I'm not sure I'm the best person for the chair, but I'm definitely willing to be the vice chair, and I guess I would consider the chair.
Okay.
That'd be a ditto for me.
Ken, would you be more comfortable if we reversed the nomination?
If you reversed it?
Yeah, so would you prefer to be the vice chair?
Yes.
Then I'll revise my nomination. Elise as chair and Ken as vice chair.
It put people on the spot.
That's what happens in these meetings.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm the chairperson of the advisory board for the museum in Price down here. I'm outgoing chair.
Yeah.
Well, good job.
Well, I would be willing to do that with some support from you, Mark. I think you've done an amazing job, and I'd be willing to do that. And I would want to make sure though that the board feels comfortable with that, because my background is in is in education and leadership with my organization and not geology, but I do have some knowledge of, I do have some geology background.
That's as important as geology background. I think your skill set is definitely qualifies you.
I do too.
So are there any other nominations? Let's do this thing. There's been a motion by Pete that Alyssa Richardson be the chairman and Ken Fleck be the vice chairman of the board going forward. Is there a second?
I will second that. This is Rick.
Seconded by Rick Chestnut. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Did somebody say they were opposed?
Not me.
Okay, good. All right, we're done. Thank you. You're the new chairman and vice chairman. Chairwoman and vice.
Welcome aboard to both of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to have you around.
When is it? How soon is it effective? Did you say March?
It'll be effective in about
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Looking forward to it.
Yep.
Yeah. You guys will do a great job. And like I said, I'm not going anywhere. I just want to have this. I am going somewhere a year from now. So I will have served 10 years on the board because I served half a term for Don Harris and then was appointed to another term, and they said, that's probably going to be it. You're probably not going to get 2 full terms. And then I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, it only cost me, no. So yeah, welcome on. And anything else anybody needs to talk about?
You were going to, I thought on the agenda was something about the awards, the Crawford Award.
Oh,
A discussion.
Oh,
Yep. There it is.
that was in, yeah, you're right. We missed that. That's under the directors at the end of the directors section.
Sorry, my bad. Hey, Mike Hillen, you want to talk about that for a moment?
Sure. Yeah, normally our spring board meeting is in May, and that's when we submit nominations for the Crawford Award, and then we present the award at the June picnic. And just prior to this meeting, I suddenly remembered that that was the case. And so what we thought we could do this year is we'll still send out our solicitation to the staff for nominations. Bill and I compile those, and then Bill can forward electronically to you all the nominations, and I think you can probably conduct a vote remotely. Does that sound like it ought to work?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, we'll probably get that going in the next week or so that we give staff plenty of time to give it some thought, give us recommendations. We'll pass them along to you, along with links to the publications so that you can take a look at them. And then perhaps it would fall to Alyssa to coordinate the vote.
Yep.
Okay. Yep, I can do that.
And then
Okay.
is the picnic still on the agenda? And if so, is there a date for it yet?
Yeah, I don't know that we're gonna. I think we're still gonna play that by ear. Who knows what's going to be happening in June yet?
I think if you put it into the beginning of July, there's a chance we could do it.
Yeah. I think that's a better bet.
Yeah. I don't see anything on my calendar, so I don't think we'd selected a date yet. So we'll just kind of, play that by ear.
Do it when we can.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. We're even on time.
So It is 11:10, and I think we're done. The meeting is adjourned.
I appreciate it all.
Do you have everything you need, Cheryl?
I think I'm good, except I will need the recording, Bill, from the one that Paul Gedge was doing that he said gave us the timing of everything. I want to just kind of re-listen to a couple of points to make sure I got everything listed.
Okay.
This is Paul Gedge, if I could address that. Apologize for the echo. Stand by 1 second. The easiest way to access the recorded copy of the proceeding is to visit the Utah Department. Yeah, if you do go to YouTube and click search and type Utah Natural Resources, it will be in the Public Meetings 2020 folder, and it should be available in the next little bit. It just takes YouTube a little bit of time to process and make that entire experience available. Take a peek. It should have some easy ways to advance forward or back to find the spot in the meeting you wish to review. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email or to Director Keach. We'll follow up and get you the resources we need. Yeah,
Okay.
the resources you need.
Okay.
Thank you.
We will have to, sorry, go ahead, Bill.